What if the Roman Empire had never fallen? On the 4th of September in the year 476, a messenger rides through the western gate of Ravenna carrying news that should have ended an empire. Rain has darkened the road. Mud covers the horse to its knees. The messenger's cloak is torn near one shoulder, and the leather tube hanging against his chest contains a letter sealed in purple wax. In our history, the message would have been unnecessary. By 476, the Western imperial government had become so weak that a Germanic military commander named Odoacer could depose the young Emperor Romulus Augustulus and send the imperial insignia east to Constantinople. Historians later treated that event as the conventional end of the Western Roman Empire, although almost nobody living through it would have experienced one clean moment when Rome suddenly ceased to exist. The decline had unfolded across generations. Civil wars had consumed armies and money. Emperors had been raised and removed by powerful generals. Tax revenue had collapsed in important provinces. The Vandal kingdom had taken North Africa, including some of the richest lands supplying grain and income to the Western state. Roman officials continued issuing laws and coins while their real authority shrank. The Eastern Empire remained powerful and would continue for almost another 1,000 years. Its citizens called themselves Romans. Modern historians would later call their state Byzantine, but that was not the name by which they understood themselves. So the Roman Empire did not fall everywhere in 476. The Western Court disappeared. In this world, the Western Court is still there. The messenger reaches the palace after sunset. Guards take the leather tube. Officials carry it through corridors lit by oil lamps. It is opened before an emperor whose title no longer guarantees obedience, but has not yet become meaningless. The letter reports that Odoacer's Federate troops have seized key roads in northern Italy and begun moving toward Ravenna. It also reports that the Northern Provincial Council has refused to support him. The revolt has failed before the decisive battle begins. The emperor reads the message twice, places it on the table, and says that the frontier reforms have held. The emperor is Majorian, older now than the general who began rebuilding the Western state 15 years earlier. A young archivist named Marcus Varro records the sentence. He does not know that future students will memorize it. He knows only that the palace kitchens are short of oil, the roof above the archive leaks during heavy rain, and a rebellion that frightened the court has ended without reaching Ravenna. The empire survives the date on which it was supposed to die, but our alternate history cannot begin in 476. By then, survival would already have required 15 years of different choices. The real point of divergence comes in August 461, when Emperor Majorian returns to Italy after an ambitious attempt to rebuild Western power. Majorian was one of the last Western emperors who possessed both military ability and a serious reform program. He tried to restore taxation, protect public buildings, limit corruption, strengthen the army, and recover territories lost to rival rulers. He prepared a large fleet for a campaign against the Vandals in North Africa. In real history, the fleet was destroyed before the expedition could begin, probably through betrayal or attack near the coast of Spain. Majorian was forced to negotiate. On his return to Italy, the powerful General Ricimer arrested him. A few days later, Majorian was killed. The Western state lost one of its final capable rulers. Our story changes three things. The fleet is guarded more carefully and survives. The African campaign does not produce a miraculous conquest in one battle, but it retakes key ports and weakens Vandal control of the grain routes. And when Majorian returns to Italy, officers loyal to him intercept Ricimer's men before the arrest. Ricimer is not executed immediately. Majorian understands that killing one powerful commander does not solve the system that allowed generals to create and remove emperors. Instead, Ricimer is tried before a council containing senators, army commanders, bishops, and representatives from several provinces. The trial is political theater. It is also the beginning of a constitutional change. Majorian has learned the most dangerous truth in the Western Empire. No emperor can govern while the army belongs personally to generals. The provinces are treated mainly as sources of tax, and succession is decided by civil war. He calls an assembly at Arles, closer to the military frontier and the wealthy cities of Gaul than Rome or Ravenna. Delegates arrive from Italy, Gaul, Hispania, North Africa, and surviving Romano-British authorities in Britain. The Eastern Emperor sends observers from Constantinople. The assembly does not create democracy in the modern sense. Most people have no vote. Wealthy landowners, clergy, military officers, and urban officials hold most political power. Slavery remains legal. Women influence government through families, property, religious institutions, and local networks, but possess few formal paths to authority. This is still the 5th century. The reforms are important because they make the empire slightly less dependent on one man. Provincial councils gain authority over local taxation and recruitment. Army commands rotate and must answer to civilian auditors. Federated peoples settled inside the borders receive clearer paths to citizenship and land ownership in exchange for service under Roman law. The emperor remains head of state, but a succession council must approve an heir or select another candidate from qualified provincial officials and commanders. The system is imperfect from its first day. It gives the powerful more ways to negotiate before they fight. That may be enough. For this thought experiment, Rome does not survive by freezing itself in the age of Augustus. No state could preserve the same borders, religion, language, army, and government for another 15 centuries. The empire survives because the meaning of Rome changes. It will lose provinces. It will gain partners. It will divide authority and reunite it. Its emperors will become less powerful. Its citizens will become more important. Latin will change. Greek will remain strong. Christianity will divide into different traditions. New religions and new civilizations will rise beside it. Technologies will arrive from beyond Roman territory as often as they are invented within it. The political line continues. Almost everything attached to that line evolves. This is the first rule of our alternate world. The second is that Roman survival does not guarantee a better history. The real Roman Empire created roads, laws, cities, trade networks, and forms of citizenship that connected an enormous region. It also conquered violently, enslaved people, punished rebellion with extraordinary cruelty, and concentrated land and power in the hands of small elites. A state carrying Roman continuity into the modern world would inherit both traditions. It might preserve knowledge. It might also preserve oppression. It might coordinate responses to famine and disease across a continent. It might spread the consequences of a bad decision across the same continent. Continuity can protect institutions from collapse. It can also protect institutions from reform. The story will turn on whether Rome becomes flexible enough to survive without becoming so rigid that survival is its only achievement. Majorian's first success is North Africa. The campaign does not remove every Vandal ruler or restore the old map immediately. Roman forces recover Carthage after a negotiated revolt among merchants, landowners, and local commanders who fear the breakdown of Mediterranean trade. Vandal elites are offered citizenship, military rank, and protected property if they accept the new settlement. Some agree. Some continue fighting from western ports. Carthage returns to imperial administration, but not to its former status as a province governed entirely from Italy. Its council controls a share of customs revenue and receives permanent seats in the Western Assembly. This arrangement saves the empire financially. North African grain does not flow to Rome as tribute from a conquered population. It moves through contracts, taxes, and political bargaining. Carthage becomes powerful enough to refuse unreasonable demands. Hadrian dislikes the limitation. He accepts it because a cooperative Carthage provides more grain than a rebellious one. The emperor then turns north. Along the Rhine and Danube, the old distinction between Roman and barbarian has already become difficult to maintain. Germanic soldiers serve in Roman armies. Roman families live beyond official borders. Traders, refugees, farmers, and warriors cross in both directions. Groups described by Roman writers as single peoples are often coalitions changing under pressure. Majorian's government stops promising to restore every frontier exactly as it existed under Trajan. Instead, it creates associated provinces. Local kings and councils can retain authority if they accept common rules for trade, military passage, taxation, and citizenship. Their children may study in Roman cities and enter imperial service. Roman officials may not confiscate land without hearings before mixed provincial courts. Some senators call this surrender. Frontier commanders call it reality written into law. The Franks of northern Gaul become one of the first large associated communities. Their leaders keep military power, but their people increasingly use Roman courts, coins, roads, and titles. Over generations, Frankish identity does not vanish. It becomes one layer inside a larger Roman political identity. This pattern repeats unevenly. Some regions integrate peacefully, others rebel. The empire survives not because war ends, but because defeat in one province no longer destroys the entire Western government. Hadrian rules for 18 more years. He does not become a perfect emperor. He raises taxes during campaigns, suppresses two revolts, and allows harsh punishments that later generations will condemn. He also prevents generals from turning the throne into private property and gives provincial institutions enough power to outlive him. When he dies in 479, the succession council does something rare. It meets before armies proclaim competing emperors. The candidates speak before representatives from 6 major regions. The Eastern Court sends legal advisors. The army remains outside the city. After 9 days, the council selects Marcellus Severianus, a provincial administrator and former commander from Gaul. The choice is disputed. It is not followed by civil war. Marcus Varro, now the senior keeper of the Western Archive, records the transition. Beside the official decree, he places a private note for his children. Rome survived because, for once, powerful men agreed that losing an argument was better than destroying the state. The sentence is not entirely true. Many people had no voice in the argument. Still, the empire has passed through the most dangerous moment in any autocratic system. The ruler has died. The government remains. By the beginning of the 6th century, nobody in Ravenna knows that the empire has already crossed the date future historians in another world will call its fall. They know the western provinces are poorer than they were centuries earlier. They know roads need repair, frontier agreements remain fragile, and Constantinople often treats the Western Assembly as an embarrassing experiment. They know the city of Rome is no longer the only center of Roman power. What they do not know is that they have begun turning an empire into something that can survive its emperors. The 6th century becomes the first true test of whether the new system is a reform or only a pause. The Eastern Empire remains wealthier, more urban, and more centralized than the West. Constantinople controls the richest tax base, the largest professional bureaucracy, and the most formidable army. Its rulers do not easily accept the idea that provincial councils in Gaul or Carthage should negotiate as equals with imperial officials. For several decades, the Roman world functions through 2 courts. The Eastern Emperor governs from Constantinople. The Western Emperor governs from Ravenna and spends increasing amounts of time in Arles and Carthage. Both claim to rule one Roman state. Both issue laws. Both place their portraits on coins. The difference from real history is that the Western court remains strong enough to bargain. When Justinian becomes Eastern Emperor in 527, he inherits the same ambition that defined him in our history: to restore order, strengthen law, defend Christianity, and recover the greatness of Rome. In our world, Justinian launched costly wars to reconquer North Africa and Italy from Vandal and Ostrogothic kingdoms. His armies achieved remarkable victories, but the campaigns devastated regions they were meant to restore and drained imperial resources. In this alternate world, North Africa and Italy are still within the Roman political system. Justinian has no Western kingdom to reconquer. He directs his ambition elsewhere. The Eastern court proposes a new imperial code gathering centuries of laws, opinions, decrees, and legal customs into one organized system. Western jurists join the project. So do lawyers from Alexandria, Carthage, Antioch, and provincial cities that once would have received law mainly from the capitals. The result is not identical to the legal code remembered from our history. It contains more recognition of provincial courts and local custom. It also protects imperial authority and inherited wealth. Roman law has always contained tensions between universal principle and social hierarchy. The new code continues both. A free citizen can appeal an official decision. An enslaved person remains property. A provincial assembly can challenge an unlawful tax. A poor tenant may still face a landlord who controls the local judges. The law becomes more consistent. Consistency does not make every law just. The greatest political achievement of Justinian's reign is the Concord of Thessalonica, signed in 532 after a crisis nearly divides the Eastern and Western administrations. The agreement creates a permanent imperial council with seats divided among major regions. Constantinople and the Western court retain emperors, but foreign policy, currency, and empire-wide law require approval from both administrations and a majority of provincial delegations. This arrangement is slow. It is frustrating during emergencies. It reduces the chance that one court will spend the wealth of the whole empire on a private war. The state increasingly resembles a federation while preserving imperial language. Citizens continue speaking of the empire because the word does not yet mean one absolute center. It means the Roman peace, Roman law, shared roads, common coinage, military obligations, and access to courts stretching around the Mediterranean. Marcus Varro's granddaughter, Cassia Varro, lives in Alexandria when the new code arrives. Her father moved there from Carthage as a customs official. Her mother belongs to a Greek-speaking Egyptian family of physicians. Cassia grows up hearing Latin in administration, Greek in education, Coptic in markets and homes, and several other languages at the harbor. She never experiences this diversity as a contradiction. Alexandria has been layered for centuries. Cassia studies medicine at a charitable hospital connected to a Christian religious community. Roman medicine remains limited by the absence of germ theory, modern anatomy, antibiotics, and laboratory science. Physicians understand patterns of symptoms, diet, injury, sanitation, and some surgical procedures. They also rely on theories about bodily humors that are often wrong. The hospital matters because it keeps records. Patients are registered. Treatments and outcomes are copied. Physicians compare cases over years. A stable administration does not automatically create scientific truth. It can preserve enough evidence for people to notice when a respected idea repeatedly fails. Cassia becomes interested in water. Poor districts near damaged channels experience more intestinal illness than neighborhoods served by maintained cisterns. She cannot see bacteria. She observes that boiling water and repairing drainage reduce disease. Her reports are sent to the city council. The council delays action because repairs are expensive. Continuity has preserved bureaucracy. It has preserved bureaucratic excuses too. In 541, a different illness arrives through the port. At first, Dock workers develop fever. Then painful swellings appear. Families fall sick within days. Streets empty. Churches fill. Wagons carry bodies beyond the city walls. The disease remembered in our history as the plague of Justinian enters an empire whose trade network is more integrated than ever. Ships carry grain, oil, cloth, officials, soldiers, letters, rats, and fleas across the Mediterranean. Roman continuity becomes a route for catastrophe. The central government responds with the tools available to a 6th century state. Ships are inspected. Some ports impose isolation. Grain warehouses are guarded. Burial teams are organized. Officials count households, though the numbers remain incomplete. Rumors spread faster than reliable information. Foreigners are blamed. Religious minorities are accused of angering God. Some preachers call the plague divine punishment for political compromise. Cassia watches fear become another disease. She records the order in which people fall ill inside households. She notices that workers handling grain and textiles from ships are often affected early. She recommends isolating cargo and storing grain away from residential districts. The advice is partly correct for reasons she cannot understand fully. It is also implemented unevenly. The plague kills an enormous number of people across both halves of the empire. Cities lose workers, tax revenue, soldiers, clergy, artisans, and administrators. Farms are abandoned. Prices shift. Labor becomes scarce. No constitutional design can prevent the biological shock. The survival of institutions changes what happens afterward. The provincial councils control emergency grain reserves instead of waiting for every order from Constantinople. Carthage redirects shipments toward the worst affected Italian ports. Gaul suspends some taxes. Eastern provinces recruit local burial and sanitation teams rather than relying only on imperial officials. Decentralization creates variation. Some regions respond effectively. Others conceal deaths to avoid trade restrictions. The Imperial Council collects reports and publishes them in several languages. The documents are copied through church networks and civic archives. Cassia's observations are included. Future physicians will not discover bacteria from her notes. They will inherit evidence that ports, grain stores, crowding, and water systems affect disease. The plague changes labor more than law. Enslaved workers and bound tenants become harder to replace. Owners offer wages and freedom to retain skilled people. Religious institutions expand manumission. Provincial governments begin taxing land rather than relying as heavily on status categories that distinguish free from enslaved labor. This does not abolish slavery. It weakens part of its economic foundation. A reform movement grows from an uncomfortable alliance. Christian leaders argue that holding another baptized person as property violates spiritual equality. Stoic philosophers revive older ideas about common human reason. Urban workers want legal mobility. Landowners want the state to compensate them for any loss. Former soldiers demand land without permanent hereditary obligations. The imperial government avoids a final decision for generations. Survival often depends on postponing conflict. Justice often depends on refusing postponement. The plague also transforms the imperial capitals. Constantinople remains the largest city, but the government distributes archives, treasury offices, and military commands across multiple centers. A disaster in one capital should not silence the state. Rome becomes the ceremonial center of law and memory. Constantinople remains the eastern administrative center. Carthage manages western grain and maritime finance. Alexandria becomes the center for medicine, mathematics, and scientific records. Alls coordinates the Rhine provinces. Antioch manages eastern trade and frontier diplomacy. No city is allowed to hold every imperial function. This is inefficient during peaceful years. It becomes one reason the empire survives crises. Justinian dies in 565. He leaves monumental buildings, a stronger legal code, exhausted finances, and a government more federal than he intended. Eastern writers praise him as the emperor who renewed Roman law. Western politicians remember him as the ruler who repeatedly tried to reduce provincial authority. Both descriptions are accurate. Cassia lives another 21 years. She becomes director of the Alexandrian hospital and establishes a rule that every treatment must be recorded with the patient's outcome, even when the physician is embarrassed by failure. The rule is often ignored. It survives in the institution's charter. Before her death, Cassia visits Rome for an imperial medical council. She enters the old Senate house, carrying copies of plague records from Egypt. A senator tells her that the empire survived because God protected Rome. Cassia answers that perhaps God also expected drains to be repaired. The remark is copied in a clerk's notes and enters the Varro family archive. By the end of the 6th century, the Roman state has survived invasion, succession, financial crisis, and pandemic. It has not returned to the power of its 2nd century height. Its borders remain unstable. Its population has fallen. Its religious arguments are becoming more severe. Its eastern rival, the Sasanian Empire, remains strong. Farther south, in Arabia, trade routes carry beliefs, poetry, and political frustrations through cities that Roman officials understand poorly. The greatest challenge to the Mediterranean order has not yet begun. Rome enters the 7th century alive. Survival is about to become smaller than victory. The 7th century begins with a war Rome believes it understands. The Eastern Empire and the Sasanian Empire of Persia have fought each other for generations. Each side raids cities, destroys farms, moves borders, negotiates peace, and prepares for another war. The conflict that begins in 602 becomes especially destructive. Roman and Persian armies march across Syria, Egypt, Anatolia, and Mesopotamia. Treasuries empty. Taxes rise. Local communities are forced to support soldiers who may not speak their language or respect their religious traditions. The federal reforms protect the western provinces from complete financial collapse, but they do not protect the East from exhaustion. When Arab armies united by the new religion of Islam move north after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, both great empires are weaker than their maps suggest. Roman officials initially described the new forces as another frontier coalition. They are wrong. The armies are mobile, politically motivated, and supported by communities building a new state. Their leaders offer terms to cities tired of imperial taxation and religious interference. Some places resist fiercely. Others negotiate. Roman Syria falls in stages. Jerusalem changes rulers. Egypt follows. Alexandria, where Cassia's hospital still keeps records, surrenders after siege and negotiation. The hospital remains open under new authority. Its physicians continue writing in Greek and Coptic. Arabic appears gradually in administration and scholarship. In another timeline, historians may describe these losses as evidence that a surviving Rome was not truly strong. In this world, Roman leaders learn a harder definition of survival. A state does not need to keep every province it once conquered. It needs to continue governing the people who still accept its institutions. The Imperial Council moves eastern archives from threatened cities. Anatolia is fortified. Naval forces protect the Aegean, Sicily, Carthage, and the western Mediterranean. The Caliphate expands across much of the Middle East and North Africa, but the Roman Federation retains Carthage and several coastal regions through a combination of walls, fleets, local alliances, and negotiated tribute. The Mediterranean is no longer a Roman lake. It becomes a border, a trade route, and a shared cultural space between powerful civilizations. The loss of Egypt ends any remaining illusion that Constantinople can command the entire Roman world alone. The Western grain system becomes essential. Carthage gains equal status with the two imperial courts. In 681, the imperial council changes its formal name. It becomes the Council of the Roman Commonwealth. The Latin word imperium remains in law and ceremony. Emperors still exist. Soldiers still swear loyalty to Rome. Coins still carry the imperial seal. But official documents increasingly describe the state as a commonwealth of provinces and associated peoples. The change is not modern democracy. Representation remains unequal. Landowners, senior clergy, guild leaders, military officers, and municipal elites dominate the councils. Rural laborers possess little influence. Enslaved people possess none. The name matters because the empire has stopped defining itself only through territory. Citizenship becomes portable. A Roman citizen in Frankish Gaul, Greek-speaking Anatolia, Latin Africa, or the cities of Italy can appeal to the same high courts, trade under common regulations, and serve in shared institutions. People outside the borders may join through treaties without surrendering every local law. Rome survives by becoming less certain about where Rome ends. One of Cassius' descendants is named Elias Varo. He is born in Carthage in 704 to a Latin-speaking mother and a father whose family came from Berber communities inland. His parents are Christian. His closest childhood friend belongs to a Jewish merchant family. Muslim traders arrive regularly from ports farther east and south. Elias learns enough Arabic to work as a translator. He travels with a Roman delegation to Alexandria, now governed by the Caliphate. The city feels familiar through family stories and unfamiliar through new administration. The old hospital has expanded. Its library contains Greek medical works, Coptic records, Persian texts, and Arabic translations. Elias expects to witness a civilization replacing another. He finds layers. Roman law survives in some property agreements. Greek remains in scholarship. Christian communities worship. Muslim judges hear cases. Merchants use several currencies and languages. The past has not vanished. It no longer controls the whole city. Elias spends 5 years negotiating trade rules between Carthage and Alexandria. Grain, papyrus, oil, glass, medical texts, and scientific instruments move across political borders. So do ideas. Indian positional numerals and the concept of zero enter Roman scholarly circles through Arabic mathematical works. Some traditional administrators resist them because imperial accounts have used Roman notation for centuries. The new numerals make multiplication, division, interest calculation, and astronomy easier. Merchants adopt them before senators do. For 2 generations, official documents display both systems. Eventually, practicality defeats prestige. This is how much of Roman technological development occurs in the alternate world, not through uninterrupted native genius, through institutions stable enough to borrow. The continued empire does not eliminate Islamic civilization, Persian scholarship, Indian mathematics, Chinese invention, African trade networks, or Northern European cultures. It depends on exchange with all of them. A Rome that refused foreign knowledge would survive only as a museum with an army. Religious conflict remains more dangerous than numerical notation. Christianity has already divided through disputes about theology, language, authority, and the status of major bishops. A single Roman state does not automatically preserve a single church. The bishops of Rome and Constantinople disagree. Churches in Africa, Gaul, Armenia, and the eastern provinces maintain distinct traditions. Imperial officials repeatedly try to impose formulas acceptable to everyone. The attempts often produce the opposite result. When the government punishes one doctrine, provinces interpret theology as another form of distant political control. Riots erupt. Bishops refuse imperial orders. Local rulers use religious allegiance to build independence. The Commonwealth finally adopts the Edict of Ravenna in 742. The edict does not create full religious freedom. It recognizes several Christian communions as legal, protects Jewish communities from forced conversion, and allows Muslim merchants to maintain places of worship in designated cities. Public office no longer requires adherence to one precise theological formula, though the emperor must still profess Christianity. The law is denounced as betrayal by religious leaders who believe truth cannot be managed like provincial taxation. It prevents several political rebellions. Over the following centuries, the requirement that the emperor be Christian also weakens and eventually disappears. The change is not driven only by tolerance. It is driven by the practical need to govern people who will not become identical. Slavery becomes the defining moral conflict of the 8th and 9th centuries. The plague reduced the supply of labor. Frontier settlement created more free farmers. Christian, Jewish, Stoic, and other arguments about shared human dignity challenged the ownership of persons. Enslaved people escape into associated provinces where status records are difficult to enforce. The wealthy resist fiercely. Roman law has regulated slavery for centuries. Estates, mines, households, and workshops depend upon it. Owners argue that abolition would destroy agriculture and violate property rights. Reform begins with children. In 768, the council declares that no child born to an enslaved mother after the new year will remain enslaved for life. The child owes a fixed period of service and then becomes free. The compromise creates another form of coercion. It also ends hereditary permanence. Slave markets decline. Debt contracts and tenant obligations expand in their place. Some former slaves receive citizenship and wages. Others become bound to land through laws that are freedom in name and dependence in practice. In 843, the Commonwealth prohibits the sale of human beings within Roman territory. Existing slavery is converted into time-limited service or freed status. Illegal enslavement continues on frontiers and in private households. Enforcement remains weak for decades. The law is celebrated in imperial memory as the abolition of slavery. Later historians point out that forced labor, hereditary tenancy, domestic servitude, and conquest continued causing suffering. Moral progress does not arrive as one clean decree. The empire changes the legal category before it changes every relationship of power. Elias Varro does not live to see the final prohibition. He returns from Alexandria with books, mathematical tables, and a small brass instrument used to measure the position of stars. He establishes a translation house in Carthage supported by merchants who want better navigation and officials who want better tax calculations. The building becomes known as the House of Four Languages. Greek, Latin, Arabic, and local African languages are copied there. Later, Hebrew, Persian, and Sanskrit works enter through other networks. The house is not the only center of learning. Constantinople, Rome, Ravenna, Massilia, Corduba, and cities beyond Roman borders developed their own schools. The importance of Roman continuity is not that every book remains in one perfect library. It is that the state maintains roads, archives, legal identities, and markets through which books can travel repeatedly. A fire destroys one collection. Copies survive elsewhere. A ruler bans one text. Another province preserves it. Decentralization protects ideas from the same unity that spreads them. By the year 900, the Commonwealth is smaller than the ancient empire at its height. It does not control Egypt, Syria, Britain, or most lands beyond the Rhine. Its core includes Italy, southern and central Gaul, much of Hispania, the Western Balkans, Greece, Anatolia, major Mediterranean islands, Carthage, and associated territories whose loyalty changes across decades. The emperor no longer commands every army directly. The Senate in Rome writes common civil law. The Eastern Court in Constantinople manages diplomacy with the caliphates and steppe powers. Carthage controls much of the fleet. Provincial assemblies collect most taxes. The system looks less impressive on a map than the empire of Trajan. It is harder to kill. The year 476 has become an obscure date in an old archive. Roman children do not learn that their civilization almost ended there. They learn about the reforms of Majorian, the plague councils, the loss of Egypt, the Commonwealth Charter, and the abolition laws. History in this world is not a story of uninterrupted victory. It is a story of institutions surviving the admission that Rome cannot own the entire civilized world. That admission opens the next age. Trade grows. Cities recover. New machines appear. And for the first time, people begin reproducing words faster than scribes can copy them by hand. The first Roman printing workshop does not begin with movable metal type. It begins with paper. Paper-making techniques move west from China through Central Asia and the Islamic world. Roman administrators have used parchment, wax tablets, papyrus, and reused scraps for centuries. Paper is lighter, cheaper, and easier to produce in large quantities once mills and supply networks are established. Merchants bring it to Carthage and Hispania during the 9th century. Officials distrust it because it seems less durable than parchment. Students love it because they can afford more than a few sheets. The House of Four Languages begins copying mathematical tables onto paper. Port authorities print simple repeated forms from carved wooden blocks. Religious communities reproduce prayers and calendars. Textile makers use blocks to transfer patterns. The technique spreads before anyone describes it as a revolution. A young craftswoman named Lucia Vero enters a workshop in Corduba in 982. She is a distant descendant of Marcus Vero, though the family archive has become larger than any one household and contains branches in several provinces. Lucia's father makes seals for legal documents. Her mother manages accounts for a guild of cloth merchants. Lucia notices that letters carved into wood can be rearranged if each letter is made separately. The idea is not hers alone. Similar experiments occur in several cities and beyond Roman borders. Metalworkers already cast coins, seals, and small decorative pieces. Scribes understand standardized alphabets. Paper provides a market. The difficulty lies in precision. Each piece must align. Ink must hold to metal without spreading. Pressing must be even. Latin letters are simpler to cast than some writing systems, but Greek, Arabic, Hebrew, and local scripts require larger sets and additional forms. A printing system designed only for Imperial Latin would exclude much of the Commonwealth's intellectual life. Lucia's workshop develops interchangeable pieces for several alphabets over 20 years. The first widely distributed book is not a philosophical masterpiece. It is a commercial handbook containing weights, measures, port taxes, currency conversions, and sample contracts. Merchants buy it immediately. The second is a collection of medical observations. The third is a religious text that produces a legal dispute because one church claims the printed wording contains errors. Printing increases knowledge and disagreement at the same time. By the 11th century, books become cheaper across the major cities. Literacy does not become universal, but urban schools expand. Provincial governments need clerks. Guilds need accounts. Courts need citizens able to read laws. Religious communities want people to study sacred texts. The Commonwealth establishes public grammar schools in towns above a certain population. The curriculum still favors boys from free families, but some provinces admit girls and poor students through local endowments. Education remains unequal. It becomes too useful to remain entirely exclusive. Latin evolves into a shared administrative language called Common Roman. It is not the Latin of Cicero. Pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar have changed. Regional forms in Gaul, Hispania, Italy, Africa, and the Balkans remain distinct enough that travelers sometimes struggle to understand one another. Greek continues as a co-equal language in the East. Local languages survive in homes, literature, religion, and provincial government. The empire does not prevent the development of French, Spanish, Italian, or Portuguese exactly as we know them. Those languages never exist in the same form because the political and cultural conditions that shape them are different. Instead, a family of Roman regional languages develops beneath a common written standard. A citizen from Cordoba may speak one language at home, use common Roman in court, and study Greek or Arabic for scholarship. Linguistic unity remains a political project rather than a natural result. Printers make regional differences visible. A poem written in the speech of Northern Gaul can be reproduced without being translated into formal Latin. Local literature expands. Provincial identities strengthen. The same technology that helps Rome communicate also gives provinces stronger voices with which to challenge Rome. The northern frontier changes through trade and war. Norse sailors raid coasts, enter rivers, and establish settlements. Roman naval patrols protect some cities and fail at others. The Commonwealth cannot prevent every attack across thousands of kilometers of coastline. It responds by doing what it has learned to do with successful outsiders. It negotiates. Norse communities receive trading rights and land in exchange for military service and recognition of provincial law. Some leaders accept Roman titles without abandoning their language or religion. Others create independent kingdoms outside the Commonwealth. Britain follows a different history from our own. The Western Empire never fully restores the old province after withdrawing most forces in the 5th century. Romano-British cities, Celtic kingdoms, Germanic settlers, and later Norse communities form a group of states connected to Gaul through trade and treaty. No single English kingdom develops exactly as it did in our history. Common Roman influences law and urban life. Germanic and Celtic languages remain strong. Britain becomes an associated archipelago rather than a permanent Roman province. This matters because the Commonwealth survives by limiting expansion. Each generation produces politicians who want to restore the ancient borders. They point to maps of Trajan's empire and call contraction humiliation. Frontier communities answer that ancient maps do not feed modern armies. The council passes the Sustainable Frontier Act in 1038. New territory may not be annexed permanently unless its population receives representation, its defense can be funded locally, and a supermajority of provinces approves. The law does not end conquest. It makes conquest administratively expensive. The age produces wars inside the Commonwealth as well. In 1086, the emperor in Constantinople attempts to appoint provincial governors directly and suspend several elected councils during a military emergency. Western provinces refuse taxes. Carthage withholds ships. Rome declares the decree unconstitutional. For 11 months, the Commonwealth approaches civil war. The emperor's supporters argue that slow federal procedures cannot defend Anatolia from invasion. Opponents argue that emergencies always become excuses for permanent power. A compromise creates the office of emergency strategos, granted military authority for 1 year and subject to review by judges from several provinces. The emperor remains ceremonial commander, but cannot extend emergency powers alone. The solution is cumbersome. It survives because neither side can win quickly. This becomes a recurring pattern in Roman political development. Power is not restrained by one enlightened constitution written once. It is restrained by institutions created after people nearly destroy one another. Universities emerge from the printing schools, legal academies, hospitals, and religious institutions. Alexandria is outside Roman territory, but its scholarly networks remain influential. Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and other centers of Islamic civilization become essential sources of mathematics, astronomy, medicine, optics, and philosophy. Roman students travel there. Muslim scholars teach in Carthage and Hispania. Jewish intellectual networks connect cities under several governments. The Commonwealth's official histories later celebrate an unbroken Roman tradition. The science itself is visibly international. Astronomers improve tables used for navigation and calendars. Physicians translate works on pharmacology and anatomy. Mathematicians adopt algebraic methods. Engineers study water wheels, gears, pumps, clocks, and improved ship design. Ancient works by Aristotle, Galen, Archimedes, and others remain available more consistently than in Western Europe of our history, but preservation does not prevent error. Reverence can make old authorities harder to challenge. One professor in Massilia demonstrates that a respected ancient medical treatment produces worse outcomes than doing nothing. His critics accuse him of misunderstanding the text. Another astronomer finds observations inconsistent with the accepted model of planetary motion. The university orders more observations rather than accepting the conclusion. Continuity supplies records. It also supplies 2,000 years of prestigious mistakes. Lucia Vero lives long enough to see printed pamphlets criticizing taxes, bishops, guilds, and the emperor. She regrets some of them. A false accusation printed in thousands of copies causes violence against a minority community in Hispania. Authorities arrest the printer. Other workshops reproduce the accusation with added details. Rome discovers that information can move faster than correction nearly 1,000 years before social media. The council creates licensing rules. Printers organize protests. Courts struggle to distinguish fraud, heresy, political criticism, and public danger. No final balance is found. Printing becomes essential to the state and impossible for the state to control completely. In 1204, another crisis tests the Roman system. In our history, soldiers of the Fourth Crusade attacked and sacked Constantinople, a Christian city, causing destruction that permanently weakened the Eastern Roman state. That exact crusade does not exist in this timeline. Western Europe has no separate claim to a revived Roman imperial title, and the political relationship between Rome and Constantinople is different. Religious wars still occur. A coalition of Western nobles, merchants, and church leaders organizes an expedition toward the Eastern Mediterranean, officially to defend pilgrims and allied territories. Debt, private ambition, and commercial rivalry redirect the fleet toward Constantinople. The city prepares for siege. This time, Carthage refuses naval support. Rome declares the expedition illegal. Provincial courts threaten to confiscate the estates of commanders who attack a Commonwealth capital. The army begins to fracture before reaching the walls. Some forces turn back. Others are allowed to enter under negotiated terms. There is violence at the harbor, but no full sack of the city. Constantinople survives the year that devastated it in our world. The event becomes proof, in imperial memory, that Roman unity prevented catastrophe. The truth is more complicated. Economic rivalry between the capitals remains. Religious division remains. The crisis was avoided because institutions made betrayal costly, not because citizens suddenly loved one another. By 1300, the Roman Commonwealth is one of several major powers across Europe, Africa, and Asia. It is not technologically modern. Most people farm. Travel remains slow. Disease is poorly understood. Women remain excluded from many institutions. Regional elites dominate politics. Yet books circulate widely. Universities compete. Roads and ports remain maintained. Common courts link distant provinces. Trade with Islamic, African, Indian, and Asian societies brings knowledge that no Roman could have created alone. The empire has preserved continuity for more than 8 centuries after its near collapse. The next century will show the danger of that connectivity again. A disease moves west along the trade routes. This time, printed warnings will travel with it. They will not be fast enough. In 1347, A merchant vessel approaches the Roman port of Massilia with several sailors already dead. The harbor physician has received printed notices from eastern cities describing fever, dark swellings, and extraordinary mortality. Similar reports have reached Constantinople, Carthage, and the Adriatic ports. The notices recommend isolation. They do not explain the cause. The ship is ordered to anchor away from the main docks for 30 days. Officials deliver water and food by small boat. 2 sailors attempt to swim ashore. 1 reaches land. Within weeks, people begin dying in the city. The Black Death enters the Roman Commonwealth despite organized warning, common law, and a medical record tradition 8 centuries old. It crosses roads built for armies and merchants. It moves through ports protected by imperial fleets. Messages travel faster than they did during the plague of Cassia's lifetime. The disease travels with them. The Commonwealth responds unevenly. Some cities close gates. Others fear that restrictions will destroy trade and conceal their first cases. Religious processions gather crowds. Wealthy families flee to rural estates, carrying infection with them. Officials blame foreign merchants, minority communities, and political rivals. Old fear returns in new languages. Physicians still do not understand fleas or the bacterium responsible. They debate corrupted air, planetary influence, poison wells, and divine anger. Some treatments harm patients. Others provide comfort without curing disease. The most useful interventions are practical. Ports isolate arriving crews. Cities establish separate houses for the sick. Clothing and bedding are burned. Markets move outdoors. Burial records are centralized. Travel permits identify where a person has been. None of these measures works perfectly. Enforcement depends on trust and resources. Families hide illness to avoid separation. Merchants bribe officials. Soldiers abandon checkpoints. The plague kills between 1/4 and half the population in many regions. No one knows the complete number. The Roman state survives. Millions of Romans do not. This difference becomes morally important in later imperial celebrations. Official anniversaries praise the continuity of government through the Great Mortality. Families remember empty villages and children buried without names. A civilization can endure while its people experience the end of their world. The plague changes power more deeply than earlier reforms. Labor becomes scarce again, but this time the economy is more urban and commercial. Workers demand higher wages. Tenants leave estates. Guilds refuse price controls. Women take over workshops and farms after male relatives die. Landowners ask the council to bind laborers to their home districts. Several provinces pass restrictions. Workers move anyway. A series of uprisings spreads through Italy, Gaul, and Hispania. Rebels burn debt records and demand representation in provincial councils. Some movements are suppressed violently. Others win concessions. The Commonwealth Charter of 1379 creates elected urban seats for recognized guilds and rural districts. Voting remains limited by property, gender, and status, but politics is no longer reserved entirely for inherited elites. The empire survives by allowing people who produce wealth to enter institutions that once only taxed them. The plague also changes medicine. Mortality registers from hundreds of towns are compared in Alexandria, Carthage, Rome, and Constantinople. Researchers notice that communities closing roads before the first confirmed death often fare better than those waiting for visible crisis. They observe that ships can carry disease without every sailor appearing sick immediately. The concept of an incubation period develops without knowledge of microbes. Permanent public health offices appear in the major ports. Their authority includes quarantine, water inspection, waste removal, and the collection of disease reports. Merchants resent them. Cities depend on them. Over centuries, these offices become ancestors of modern epidemiology. The intellectual culture after the plague does not experience a renaissance in the form familiar to our history. Classical Roman and Greek works were never lost as completely within the Commonwealth. Scholars did not need to rediscover Rome as a vanished world. Instead, the 15th century produces a movement called the New Examination. Its writers argue that preserving an old text is not the same as proving it correct. They use printed editions to compare manuscripts, identify copying errors, and challenge contradictions. Artists study ancient methods while deliberately breaking their rules. Physicians demand anatomy based on observation. Lawyers compare imperial ideals with the actual treatment of poor citizens and provincial minorities. The movement turns continuity against authority. If Rome claims 2,000 years of reason, its critics say, Rome must be willing to learn from 2,000 years of mistakes. Universities become politically dangerous. Students organize across provinces. Printers publish arguments before censors can respond. The emperor's ceremonial speeches are annotated and mocked in the margins. The state tries to control some publications and sponsors others. No single church or palace directs the entire intellectual movement because authority is distributed across cities. Competition within the Commonwealth begins producing some of the diversity that fragmentation created in our history. Scientific development accelerates in several fields. Accurate mechanical clocks improve navigation and measurement. Optical experiments produce better lenses. Astronomers collect long series of observations from different latitudes. Engineers improve pumps, mills, and metalworking. This does not create an industrial revolution immediately. Labor remains available. Wood and animal power remain cheaper than complex machines in many places. Social institutions often reward land ownership more than invention. Steam devices are known as curiosities and specialized pumps, not yet engines transforming production. Continuous knowledge is not enough. An invention becomes revolutionary only when materials, energy, markets, finance, and social demand align. Maritime technology reaches that alignment first. Roman merchants have traded through the Atlantic for centuries, but voyages remain close to coasts and known islands. Competition with North African, West African, Northern European, and Islamic trading networks encourages better maps, hulls, compasses, and navigation tables. Hispanian and African provinces finance expeditions along the western coast of Africa. Some seek gold. Some seek direct access to Indian Ocean trade. Some carry missionaries and diplomats. Some carry soldiers. The language of exploration hides familiar motives. In 1468, a fleet sponsored by merchants in Gades reaches islands far into the Atlantic and returns with evidence of stronger western currents. In 1489, another expedition disappears. In 1496, 3 Roman ships cross the ocean and reach islands inhabited by people whose civilizations have developed without knowledge of Rome. The crews do not discover an empty world. They enter one already filled with nations, languages, trade, conflict, agriculture, law, and history. The first encounter is cautious. Gifts are exchanged. Communication relies on gesture. The Roman captains claim the islands for the Commonwealth in a ceremony the inhabitants do not understand. The legal claim produces an immediate dispute back home. Under the Sustainable Frontier Act, territory cannot be annexed without representation and a viable administration. The captains had no authority to claim land whose people had never agreed to Roman law. Merchants argue that the law applies only to known states. Jurists answer that ignorance is not vacancy. The council declares the claim invalid. This does not prevent colonization. Private companies establish trading posts. Missionaries travel. Soldiers are hired as guards. Local rulers form alliances against rivals. Roman diseases spread through communities lacking immunity. The demographic catastrophe begins before the Commonwealth understands its scale. Smallpox, measles, influenza, and other infections kill people far from the first ports. Roman officials record abandoned villages and interpret them as evidence that the land was sparsely inhabited. Survivors know otherwise. The alternate Rome carries public health institutions across the ocean. It also carries pathogens those institutions cannot stop. A legal advocate named Amara Vero travels to the Western Islands in 1518. Her family descends from Lucia's branch in Hispania. She expects to investigate illegal enslavement by a trading company. She finds a system designed to make coercion appear contractual. Local people are forced to work through debts they never accepted. Translators alter agreements. Company courts punish resistance as breach of Roman law. Priests condemn some abuses and participate in others. Amara sends testimony to the Senate. The company accuses her of damaging imperial security. Her reports become the foundation of the oceanic citizenship cases. The High Court rules that Roman merchants cannot deny legal personhood to people merely because they live beyond Commonwealth territory. Treaties require consent from recognized local authorities. Forced labor is prohibited. The ruling is historically celebrated. Enforcement remains inconsistent. Companies relocate beyond direct control. Provincial politicians protect profitable trade. Roman settlements expand. Indigenous nations use diplomacy, law, and armed resistance to preserve territory. The Americas of this alternate world do not become the same colonies and countries known in our history. Some coastal regions enter Commonwealth association. Others remain independent. Several large states adopt Roman weapons and legal tools while refusing Roman sovereignty. Epidemics and wars still produce enormous suffering. A surviving Rome does not create a gentler age of exploration automatically. It carries a stronger legal language with which conquest can be challenged. It also carries a stronger state capable of sustaining conquest across generations. The contradiction becomes part of imperial identity. School children later learn that Rome extended citizenship across oceans. They also learn, if their curriculum is honest, that citizenship was often offered after disease, violence, and dispossession had already changed what choice meant. By 1550, the Commonwealth spans less territory in Europe than ancient Rome, but operates networks across the Atlantic, Africa, and Asia. Its cities are wealthy. Its law is influential. Its printing culture is difficult to control. Its provincial councils contain merchants and guild representatives beside aristocrats and clergy. The emperor has become more symbol than ruler. The old title remains because continuity carries prestige. Real power lies in the Senate, provincial assemblies, courts, military councils, and financial institutions. Rome has survived long enough to become modern in one sense. Its citizens increasingly believe the state must justify authority rather than merely inherit it. The next transformation begins underground. Coal miners in northern Gaul and Britain need pumps powerful enough to keep water from filling deeper shafts. Engineers return to an old substance the Romans have used for baths, toys, and demonstrations for centuries: steam. Steam does not transform the Commonwealth because Roman engineers invented it in antiquity. Ancient inventors had already demonstrated that heated water could produce motion. The devices remained small because no economic system required them to replace abundant human and animal labor, and because the metalworking needed for reliable high-pressure machines did not yet exist. The new engines emerge when several separate needs meet. Mines require drainage. Cities require fuel. Printers, mills, and workshops require regular power. Investors possess enough capital to finance experiments. Metallurgists can produce cylinders and valves with increasing precision. The Commonwealth's long engineering tradition contributes records, workshops, and institutions. It does not skip the conditions that make invention useful. The first commercial steam pumps appear in the late 16th century. They are inefficient and dangerous. Boilers rupture. Miners die. Owners continue using them because flooded coal seams are expensive. Engineers improve condensers and pressure control. Provincial safety laws follow accidents rather than preventing them. By the middle of the 17th century, steam power operates pumps, mills, and some river vessels. Mechanical production expands in Gaul, northern Italy, the Danube provinces, and associated Britain. Industrialization arrives perhaps a century earlier than in our history, not 1,000 years earlier. The difference is still enormous. Factories draw workers into cities. Coal smoke covers neighborhoods. Rivers receive chemical waste. Handcraft guilds lose power. Textile machines produce cloth faster than families working at home. The empire that once depended on enslaved labor confronts a new way to treat human beings as replaceable parts. Workers are legally free. Many possess no land and few alternatives. Factories use children. Shifts last through the night. Injuries are common. Owners argue that contracts prove consent. Roman law, celebrated for protecting citizenship, struggles with an economy in which formal freedom can coexist with desperation. Amara Vero's descendants enter labor politics. One of them, Julian Vero, is a printer in Lugdunum during the unrest of 1631. His workshop publishes reports of factory deaths and mining accidents. He also publishes rumors, political attacks, and an anonymous pamphlet calling the emperor a decorated remainder of ancient tyranny. The authorities arrest him. His trial becomes a constitutional crisis. The prosecution argues that imperial dignity holds the Commonwealth together. If citizens may insult the emperor openly, the oldest political institution in the world becomes vulnerable to contempt. The defense argues that an institution surviving only through silence has already failed. The High Court acquits Julian of treason and convicts him of knowingly printing a false accusation against a minister. The distinction establishes a principle. The government may punish fraud and direct incitement. It may not punish criticism merely because criticism is disrespectful. Later generations celebrate the decision as the birth of Roman freedom of expression. Printers remind them that several people remained imprisoned under narrower charges. Political freedom develops through imperfect cases, not one heroic declaration. The scientific examination deepens during the same period. Astronomers use telescopes to observe moons circling other planets and phases inconsistent with the old Earth-centered system. Physicists test motion through controlled experiments. Anatomists compare bodies rather than copying ancient diagrams. Chemists begin separating substances through repeatable methods. The Commonwealth does not avoid conflict between new evidence and religious authority. Several churches condemn cosmological claims they believe contradict Scripture. Some provincial governments ban books. The imperial universities disagree with one another. The federal structure makes complete suppression difficult. A banned astronomer moves from Rome to Massilia. A controversial medical school relocates from Constantinople to Carthage. Printers reproduce forbidden arguments in associated states. Fragmented authority inside one political system encourages intellectual competition. Religious authority changes as well. The Commonwealth never develops one single Catholic Church identical to the institution in our history. Rome remains an important Christian center, but Constantinople, Carthage, regional synods, Jewish courts, Muslim communities, and secular provincial governments limit universal control. Reform movements challenge wealth, hierarchy, ritual, and imperial influence. Some split churches. Others produce new denominations. Religious wars break out in Central Europe and the Balkans. The existence of one Roman political framework does not prevent people from killing one another over faith. It changes the scale of conflict. Provincial armies fight. The Commonwealth Council attempts mediation. No ruler can easily command every Roman territory to adopt one doctrine. After 3 decades of intermittent war, the Accord of Aquileia in 1669 establishes full civic citizenship independent of religion. Public office, property, and court protection may not depend on Christian confession. The emperor is no longer required to belong to a particular church. The first non-Christian member of the Imperial Succession Council is a Jewish jurist from Carthage. The first Muslim provincial consul is elected in southern Hispania 9 years later. Prejudice does not disappear because law changes. The law removes one of its most powerful official forms. The same fragmentation slows common standards. Medical licenses differ by province. Weights and measures vary. Scientific societies spend decades negotiating shared units. In 1684, the Senate establishes the Roman Academy of Measures, funded jointly by provinces and independent from the emperor. It creates standard procedures for publishing experiments, preserving observations, and correcting errors. Membership includes women in some fields long before women receive equal political rights. Wealthy and educated women have always participated indirectly in scholarship. Industrial cities need teachers, physicians, accountants, and engineers too urgently to maintain every older restriction. Access expands unevenly. A woman may direct a laboratory in Alexandria and still lack the vote in her province. The contradiction between scholarly participation and political exclusion becomes harder to defend as printed arguments circulate. The emperor's role changes decisively in 1712. An unpopular emperor attempts to dissolve the Senate after it blocks military spending. He orders loyal troops toward Rome. Provincial commanders refuse. The High Court declares the order unlawful. The emperor abdicates under pressure. Instead of selecting another ruler for life, the council establishes a 12-year imperial term. The Augustus or Augusta will serve as ceremonial head of the Commonwealth, appoint ministers approved by the Senate, represent continuity in diplomacy, and retain limited emergency duties. The office is elected by a combination of provincial legislatures and direct citizen ballots, though voting rights remain restricted. The empire keeps an emperor. The emperor no longer owns the empire. Traditionalists mourn the end of ancient majesty. Reformers point out that Augustus himself would not recognize an election open to candidates from Africa, Gaul, Anatolia, or Hispania. The title survives by abandoning most of the power that created it. This may be the central paradox of the alternate Roman world. Continuity requires repeated surrender of the original form. Industrial growth makes the Commonwealth wealthier and more unequal. Rail experiments begin with steam wagons on short tracks used in mines. Canals link rivers. Postal systems become faster and more reliable. Newspapers create a shared political conversation across provinces. The conversation is rarely calm. Citizens in Gaul ask why taxes support eastern defenses. Anatolian provinces ask why Western factories receive protective tariffs. Carthaginian merchants oppose Atlantic regulations written in Rome. Associated states want full representation without full military obligations. The Commonwealth becomes a permanent negotiation over who pays, who decides, and who belongs. Across the Atlantic, colonial companies grow powerful enough to challenge imperial law. Some settlements demand self-government. Indigenous states use Roman courts when useful and reject Roman claims when not. Mixed societies develop new languages and identities. The Senate cannot treat oceanic territories as ordinary provinces without giving millions of people representation. It cannot treat them only as possessions without violating its own citizenship principles. The Oceanic Reform Act of 1748 creates the first autonomous commonwealths, connected to Rome by trade and defense rather than ruled directly from the capital. Slavery reappears in Atlantic territories despite the old prohibition. Plantation owners import enslaved people through foreign traders and claim Roman law does not apply beyond provincial boundaries. Abolitionists expose the contradiction. The Commonwealth Navy begins intercepting slave ships in 1761. Courts free captives brought into Roman ports. Associated states face sanctions if they permit human sale. The policy is morally important and politically self-serving. Roman manufacturers benefit from weakening rival plantation economies. Naval officers use abolition as a reason to extend maritime control. Good law and strategic interest often travel together. A Second Oceanic Reform Act in 1772 expands autonomy. Several colonies become independent states. Others remain associated. The transition includes wars. Rome calls them constitutional disputes. People fighting on the ground call them revolutions. There is no United States exactly as in our history. There is no Spanish or Portuguese colonial empire in the same form. Instead, the Western Hemisphere contains indigenous federations, Roman-associated coastal republics, African diaspora communities, and independent states formed from combinations that do not exist in our timeline. By 1800, the Roman Commonwealth possesses steam industry, constitutional government, printed mass politics, growing scientific institutions, and centuries of archived law. It also possesses polluted cities, exploited workers, colonial violence, religious tension, and provinces that increasingly ask whether Roman identity still serves them. The empire has survived by changing before. The 19th century will demand a more difficult change. People will no longer ask only for representation within Rome. They will ask whether they need Rome at all. Nationalism enters the Roman Commonwealth through the same institutions that once unified it. Printed schools teach shared history. Railways connect provinces. Censuses classify language and identity. Newspapers create audiences larger than towns and smaller than the empire. People begin imagining themselves as members of nations defined by speech, region, ancestry, religion, and common memory. Roman citizenship remains valuable. It no longer answers every question of belonging. In northern Gaul, speakers of regional Roman dialects demand education in their own language rather than only common Roman. In the Balkans, communities argue over borders and historical claims. Anatolian provinces contain Greek, Armenian, Turkish, Kurdish, Jewish, and other populations whose identities cannot be fitted neatly into administrative lines. Carthage's African provinces reject histories describing Roman settlement as the beginning of civilization. Their scholars recover Berber, Punic, and other traditions older than Roman rule. The Commonwealth faces a choice. It can treat cultural difference as disloyalty, or it can allow Roman citizenship to become only one layer of identity. The first response is repression. After protests in the Danube provinces in 1824, the Senate authorizes emergency rule. Newspapers are closed. Leaders are arrested. Soldiers fire into a crowd. The violence spreads rebellion rather than stopping it. Provincial militias refuse orders. Rail workers block troop movement. Student groups coordinate through telegraph lines. For the first time in centuries, several regions declare that they intend to leave the Commonwealth entirely. The government cannot defeat them all without destroying the federal order it claims to defend. An engineer named Ilia Vero becomes involved accidentally. She directs bridge construction along a railway linking northern Italy with the Danube. The army orders her company to reserve the line for military transport. Workers refuse. Ilia is summoned before a provincial tribunal and asked whether infrastructure belongs to the state during rebellion. She answers that the railway belongs to the public whose taxes built it. Both sides quote the sentence. Ilia spends the next decade helping negotiate the Charter of Nations. The Charter, adopted in 1836, recognizes each province's right to use local languages, write its own constitution, and hold a referendum on membership after a lengthy process of negotiation. Defense, currency, major trade rules, and high courts remain common. Several territories choose independence. The Commonwealth loses land without declaring the loss an imperial collapse. Other provinces remain because departure is now legally possible. The reform changes the map. The Roman state becomes a federation concentrated around the Mediterranean and connected through associated republics rather than one continuous bloc. Italy, southern Gaul, parts of Hispania, the Adriatic provinces, Greece, western Anatolia, major islands, Carthage, and several autonomous regions remain at its core. Independent neighbors share railways, markets, and defense agreements. The empire survives by allowing people to leave it. Traditionalists call this the second fall of Rome. The government continues operating the next morning. Railways transform daily life more visibly than constitutional language. Routes often follow old Roman corridors because ancient engineers chose practical passes, valleys, and coastal lines. Modern tracks do not rest directly on 2,000-year-old paving stones. They follow the geography remembered by the roads. Stations carry Latin and local names. Freight crosses provinces under common regulations. A traveler can move from Carthage to Rome, continue to Massilia, and reach northern associated states using one passport and several languages. The old phrase "all roads lead to Rome" becomes less true. The network leads everywhere. Rome remains the ceremonial capital. Constantinople hosts the high court and eastern ministries. Carthage contains the naval command and trade institutions. Alexandria, outside the Federation but tied through treaties, remains a center of science. The distribution prevents one city from becoming the only heart of the state. Industrialization produces mass poverty beside extraordinary wealth. Factory districts expand faster than sewers and housing. Coal smoke shortens lives. Workers organize across provincial borders. Employers use regional differences to break strikes. The Senate initially treats labor organizations as threats to trade. A series of mine explosions changes public opinion. The labor statutes of 1849 limit child employment, require inspections, and establish compensation for industrial injury. Working hours remain long. Enforcement is weak in poorer provinces. Unions gain legal recognition after a general strike in 1867 stops trains and ports across the Commonwealth. The strike frightens the government more than any frontier army. Workers demonstrate that control over infrastructure can rival military power. Universal male suffrage arrives in stages. Property requirements fall. Rural citizens gain direct votes. Former colonial territories receive representation through associated institutions. Women remain excluded despite working in factories, hospitals, schools, businesses, scientific societies, and provincial administrations. Ilia Vero becomes one of the most visible campaigners for equal citizenship. Opponents cite Roman tradition. She answers that nearly every institution they defend as Roman was once an innovation. In 1874, several provinces enfranchise women independently. The federal Senate resists until the election of an Augusta, chosen partly by those provincial votes, creates an obvious contradiction. Equal adult suffrage becomes Commonwealth law in 1882. The reform does not eliminate social hierarchy. Wealth, education, race, region, and family continue shaping political influence. It changes who may formally speak. Public education expands with the vote. Children learn Common Roman, a local language, mathematics, natural science, and imperial history. The history curriculum becomes a political battlefield. Older textbooks describe Majorian as the savior who preserved civilization. Newer editions emphasize provincial resistance, labor, women, religious minorities, and people harmed by Roman expansion. Some citizens accuse the schools of teaching shame. Others accuse them of teaching mythology. The Senate establishes an independent historical commission that publishes sources rather than one approved story. The commission's first report states that Rome survived through both achievement and violence. No political faction is satisfied. That may be why the report endures. Medicine changes rapidly through microscopes, laboratory experiments, and statistical public health. Researchers identify microorganisms associated with disease. Hand washing, sterilization, clean water, vaccination, and sewage systems save more lives than the grand monuments celebrated by earlier emperors. Cachavero's 6th century records are studied again. Her association between ports, grain, and plague was incomplete, but her insistence on recording outcomes appears remarkably modern. The old hospital tradition becomes part of a new evidence-based medicine. Continuous archives provide long data sets on climate, epidemics, crops, and population. Researchers can compare centuries of records kept under changing standards. The archive is valuable because it is continuous. It is difficult because categories changed. A fever recorded in 800 may not match a diagnosis in 1800. A census may omit enslaved, rural, or minority populations. The surviving state preserved documents written by people with power more reliably than voices without it. Historians learn that continuity of records is not the same as completeness of memory. Electricity begins transforming cities in the final decades of the century. Telegraph cables connect continents. Streetlights extend activity after dark. Electric trams replace some horse traffic. Newspapers receive reports from distant provinces within hours. The Commonwealth's political scale becomes easier to manage technologically just as its citizens become less willing to accept distant control. Fast communication does not solve disagreement. It allows disagreement to coordinate. International politics also changes. China, Indian states, Islamic federations, African powers, American republics, Northern European alliances, and the Roman Commonwealth industrialize at different speeds. No single civilization dominates the world without rivals. Rome's unbroken age gives it prestige. Prestige does not guarantee strength. Some younger states possess larger populations, richer resources, or more efficient industries. Roman institutions can be slow because every major decision requires negotiation among provinces. Supporters call this stability. Critics call it ancient hesitation. By 1900, the Commonwealth is more than 26 centuries removed from Rome's traditional founding and nearly 2 millennia from Augustus. Its elected Augusta opens the Senate each year. Citizens carry documents identifying them as Roman alongside provincial nationality. The army answers to civilian institutions. The courts quote legal principles that evolved from ancient sources through thousands of amendments. The empire has become a constitutional federation that would look like a republic to Augustus and an empire to outsiders. Its citizens debate whether the old word should be retired. They do not have time to decide. A political assassination in the Balkans triggers military mobilizations across several alliances. Railway schedules designed for commerce become timetables for war. The oldest surviving state in Europe enters the 20th century, believing its institutions can contain the crisis. They almost do. The assassination does not begin a war because one empire commands it. It begins a war because several governments fear that waiting will leave them weaker. Northern alliances mobilize. Eastern states prepare their borders. Roman provincial armies activate under a defense plan written years earlier. The plan assumes speed will prevent conflict by making victory impossible for an opponent. Other states possess plans built on the same assumption. Telegraph messages cross. Trains move soldiers. Diplomats continue negotiating after military schedules have made negotiation harder. The Continental War begins in 1908. It is not identical to the First World War of our history. The nations, borders, alliances, and technologies have developed differently. Its basic horror is familiar. Industrial states direct artillery, machine weapons, chemical agents, railways, factories, and mass conscription toward destroying one another. Trenches stretch across northern Italy, the Danube Basin, and Central Europe. Naval blockades create shortages around the Mediterranean. Colonial and associated forces are recruited from Africa and overseas states. The Roman Commonwealth enters as a federation. It discovers that federal war distributes responsibility without distributing suffering equally. Frontier provinces become battlefields. Wealthier Western cities supply weapons and remain physically distant. Carthaginian sailors protect shipping routes. Anatolian communities fear attack from multiple directions. The Senate debates every major strategy too slowly for generals and too quickly for citizens. Emergency powers expand. Newspapers are censored. People of enemy ancestry are placed under surveillance or removed from sensitive areas. The Commonwealth that spent centuries building layered citizenship begins deciding which citizens are sufficiently Roman during fear. A military nurse named Helena Vero works in a hospital train. She is a descendant of Elia's family and carries a small copy of Cassia's plague notes as a personal tradition. The train moves between fronts, receiving soldiers with injuries no ancient physician could have imagined at scale. Antibiotics do not yet exist. Surgeons have anesthesia and antisepsis, but infection remains dangerous. Helena writes that the Roman state has perfected the transportation of wounded bodies without learning how to prevent politicians from producing them. Her letters circulate after the war. The conflict lasts 6 years. No side achieves the quick victory promised at mobilization. Governments collapse. Revolutions begin. Famine spreads. Millions die. The Commonwealth survives territorially, but loses moral confidence. Its soldiers return to find unemployment, debt, and politicians praising sacrifice from buildings untouched by artillery. The imperial office appears weak because the elected Augusta refused to endorse unrestricted military rule. Reformers praise her. Veterans' movements call her betrayal the reason victory remained incomplete. Economic crisis deepens when global trade contracts. A political organization called the Restoration League grows across Italy and several Western provinces. Its members use ancient symbols, military uniforms, and speeches about discipline. They argue that federal compromise has made Rome old, soft, and divided. They do not want the actual government of Augustus. They want an imagined past in which one leader commanded and everyone obeyed. The League's leader, General Cassian Drusus, promises to restore the true empire. He blames provincial autonomy, immigrants, religious minorities, labor unions, and independent courts for decline. His movement wins elections in several provinces. It also uses street violence. The Roman Commonwealth confronts a danger created by its own history. A dictatorship can present itself not as revolution, but as return. Drusus enters the Senate in 1921 after his supporters surround the building. He demands appointment as emergency strategos without a time limit. Several ministers agree, hoping to control him. The Augusta refuses. The High Court declares the demand unconstitutional. Drusus orders sympathetic military units to occupy communication centers. For 48 hours, the Commonwealth stands closer to collapse than it has since the 5th century. The coup fails for reasons no single hero can claim. Rail workers stop military trains. Provincial governors refuse recognition. The Carthaginian fleet blocks units loyal to Drusus from crossing the sea. Civil servants preserve government records outside Rome. Crowds occupy local council buildings. Most importantly, the army is divided, and officers know the Commonwealth can continue without control of the capital. Drusus is arrested. The Restoration League is dissolved after public trials revealing plans for mass detention and political murder. The failure becomes a national myth about institutions defeating tyranny. Later historians point out that authoritarian movements remain powerful and that several provinces had already persecuted minorities before the coup. A failed dictator does not prove a society is immune to dictatorship. The interwar decades bring labor rights, public housing, broader education, and social insurance. They also bring resentment, border disputes, and competing authoritarian governments beyond Roman territory. A second global war begins in 1942 after an expansionist northern state invades its neighbors and forms an alliance with regimes seeking territorial revision. The Commonwealth enters later after attacks on associated states and Mediterranean shipping. This war is more mobile and more destructive. Aircraft reach cities far from fronts. Armored forces cross borders quickly. Civilian populations become direct targets. One allied dictatorship begins systematic extermination of ethnic, religious, and political groups. Roman officials receive refugees and reports. Some provinces open borders. Others refuse, fearing economic pressure and infiltration. The oldest legal tradition in Europe fails many people at the moment they need it. After the war, commissions document how ordinary administrators used forms, trains, property registers, and police files to support mass murder. The lesson is unbearable for a bureaucratic civilization. Law and records can protect rights. They can also organize persecution with precision. The Commonwealth helps defeat the expansionist alliance, but several Roman cities are bombed, and eastern territories are occupied temporarily. Helena Vero's son dies during the liberation of an associated Balkan republic. The war ends with new weapons capable of destroying cities in moments. Scientists who develop them argue that another total war could end civilization rather than one empire. The Imperial Senate hosts negotiations for an international organization larger than any Roman system. The resulting World Assembly includes states with no interest in Roman leadership. Rome has survived long enough to accept that global law cannot be Roman law under another name. The post-war constitution removes the last emergency powers held personally by the Augustus. The imperial office becomes almost entirely ceremonial and cultural. Executive government belongs to a prime consul elected by the Senate and responsible to a directly elected citizens' chamber. The state retains the word empire in historical titles. Its legal name becomes the Roman Federation. Many citizens continue calling it the Commonwealth. The 20th century also ends formal overseas rule. Associated territories demand full independence after contributing soldiers and resources to 2 wars. Roman politicians who celebrate provincial autonomy at home resist applying it abroad. Strikes, elections, boycotts, and armed conflicts force the issue. Most overseas commonwealths become sovereign during the 1960s and 1970s. Some maintain free movement, shared courts, and economic agreements. Others sever Roman institutions completely. Decolonization reveals another contradiction. The Federation interprets withdrawal as evidence of its flexibility. Newly independent societies remember how long they had to fight for a principle Rome claimed to possess already. Immigration changes the core provinces. People from former colonies and neighboring states move to Rome, Carthage, Massilia, Milan, Thessalonica, and Constantinople. They bring languages, religions, food, music, and political demands. Some citizens welcome the diversity as a continuation of ancient Rome's cosmopolitan character. Others claim that people from territories Rome once ruled are not truly Roman. History provides symbols for both inclusion and exclusion. The civil rights movements of the 1960s and 1970s challenged discriminatory housing, employment, policing, and citizenship practices. Courts interpret Roman citizenship as equal protection regardless of ancestry, religion, or province. Social prejudice changes more slowly. Technology develops along a path broadly recognizable to us. Electric grids expand. Automobiles reshape cities. Radio and television create shared culture. Computers emerge from mathematics, wartime calculation, and industrial research. Spaceflight becomes a competition among several world powers. The Federation launches satellites from North African and Mediterranean facilities and participates in an international lunar program. Roman continuity does not place legions on the moon in the Middle Ages. It gives the modern space agency an ancient name and a very long archive. Environmental damage becomes a political crisis. Industrial rivers burn. Air pollution covers valleys. Mediterranean fisheries decline. Climate records preserved across centuries reveal long-term change. The Federation creates environmental courts able to hear cases brought by provinces and citizens against the central government. Ancient legal concepts of public water and common resources are adapted to modern ecosystems. Again, the past provides tools. It does not provide answers automatically. By the end of the 20th century, the Roman Federation is no longer the largest or most powerful state in the world. It is one influential federation among many. Its population is diverse. Its borders are smaller. Its institutions are old enough to contain ceremonies nobody fully understands and recent enough to include rites won within living memory. The empire never fell. Many versions of the empire ended. The surviving state enters the new millennium preparing for an anniversary that would sound impossible in our world. More than 2,000 years since Augustus. No one agrees on what exactly is being celebrated. On the 4th of September 2026, Julia Vero enters the Imperial Archive before sunrise. The date marks 1,550 years since Odoacer's failed military revolt. Officially, the holiday is called Continuity Day. Julia dislikes the name. Nothing about Roman history has been continuous in the simple way the word suggests. Borders moved. Languages changed. Religions divided. Provinces left. Dynasties ended. Constitutions were rewritten. Capitals rose and declined. The line survived because almost everything around it was allowed to break and be rebuilt. Julia is a historian responsible for an exhibition inside the restored complex beside the Senate in Rome. She is not certain whether she is a literal descendant of Marcus Vero. The family archive contains adoptions, marriages, name changes, political inventions, and several centuries with incomplete evidence. The claim matters less than the documents. The first display contains a copy of Marcus's note after the peaceful succession of 479. Powerful men agreed that losing an argument was better than destroying the state. A digital label adds context. Most inhabitants had no voice in that agreement. The two sentences summarize the exhibition. Modern Rome is not a city preserved beneath glass. Ancient structures survive where continuous use and repair allowed them to survive. Others disappeared under later construction. Streets contain layers rather than perfect originals. The Pantheon remains a major civic and religious building. It has served different Christian traditions, public ceremonies, memorials, and interfaith gatherings. Its ancient dome has been repaired repeatedly with materials its original builders would not recognize. The Colosseum is not an untouched arena. Gladiatorial combat ended many centuries earlier. The structure became a fortified shelter during unrest, a market, a public assembly space, and eventually a stadium used for ceremonies, theater, and sport. Modern supports preserve ancient walls beside sections rebuilt after earthquakes and war. Tourists sometimes complain that continuous adaptation made the monument less authentic. Romans answer that a building used for 2,000 years cannot remain authentic to only its first purpose. The Senate complex contains electronic voting systems beneath inscriptions copied from earlier halls. The elected Augusta opens the annual session wearing a ceremonial purple band. She serves one 12-year term and possesses less direct power than many provincial governors. Her portrait appears on commemorative coins. Most payments are digital. The Senate shares federal authority with the Citizens' Chamber. Provinces send representatives according to population and constitutional status. The High Court sits primarily in Constantinople, officially Nova Roma, while major agencies remain distributed across the Federation. Carthage hosts maritime and trade institutions. Massilia contains environmental and oceanic agencies. Thessalonica coordinates transport. Rome remains the symbolic center because symbols have political weight even when ministries move elsewhere. Citizens carry a Roman federal passport and a provincial identity. Julia is Roman, Italian, and part of a family with African and Balkan ancestry. None of these categories feels contradictory to her. Common Roman remains the main federal language. It descends from Latin but sounds nothing like a reconstruction of ancient speech. A modern citizen can recognize roots in inscriptions and understand only fragments without study. Greek is co-official in Eastern institutions. Provinces use dozens of languages in schools and government. Arabic is common in Carthage and southern ports. Berber languages hold protected status in North Africa. Regional Roman languages remain strong in Gaul, Hispania, and Italy. The Balkans and Anatolia contain even greater linguistic variety. The Commonwealth did not prevent language from changing. It prevented one set of changes known in our world and produced another. There is no country exactly equivalent to modern Italy, France, Spain, or Greece. Those geographic and cultural regions exist, but their political development followed federal and provincial paths rather than the histories we know. There is no Holy Roman Empire because nobody needed to revive an imperial title that never disappeared. There is no Byzantine Empire as a separate name used by its own people. The Eastern Roman tradition remains one branch inside the Commonwealth and later Federation. The papacy never becomes the same territorial power. Christian churches develop through several centers. The religious map is more plural and no less complicated. There is no Renaissance defined as Europe's rediscovery of classical Rome. There are repeated movements of revision, rebellion, and return inside a civilization that never stopped arguing with its classical inheritance. There is no guarantee that the rest of the world resembles ours closely. Without post-Roman kingdoms developing in the same way, later dynasties, migrations, marriages, wars, and colonial states change. Countless historical individuals are never born. Modern borders across Europe, the Americas, Africa, and parts of Asia are different. China, Indian states, Islamic civilizations, African federations, Northern alliances, American nations, and oceanic republics still shape global history, but not under exactly the names or timelines familiar to us. Rome's survival changes the world. It does not make Rome the whole world. Technology in 2026 is broadly comparable to our own. People use smartphones, artificial intelligence, high-speed rail, aircraft, modern medicine, satellites, and global networks. Some developments arrived earlier in the alternate timeline. Others arrived later. Continuous records supported engineering and public health. Centralized traditions sometimes delayed disruptive ideas. Trade with other civilizations remained essential. No honest counterfactual can calculate exactly when every invention would appear after 15 centuries of changed history. A surviving Rome does not automatically place humanity on Mars by the year 1200. Julia commutes through the city on an electric train following part of an ancient transport corridor. The modern tunnel does not sit directly on a Roman road. Engineers chose the same valley because geography continues after governments change. She buys coffee from a family whose grandparents migrated from an independent Nile republic. She receives messages in common Roman and Italian provincial speech. Her colleague in Constantinople joins through a video wall. Students from Carthage arrive for the exhibition wearing clothes no ancient Roman would identify as Roman. This is what continuity looks like in daily life. Not citizens walking in togas. People treating a 2,000-year-old political identity as ordinary. The law retains Latin phrases, though judges translate them for modern courts. Roman concepts of citizenship, contracts, public property, and appeal remain visible beneath centuries of revision. The legal tradition is admired globally. It is also criticized for complexity. Some statutes contain amendments referring to institutions that disappeared 1,000 years earlier. Lawyers specialize in tracing how one ancient principle changed through dozens of constitutional layers. Reformers periodically demand a complete new code. Traditionalists argue that replacing the old structure would break continuity. The argument has lasted for centuries. The Federation's greatest strength may be institutional memory. Its archives contain harvest records, plague reports, climate observations, court decisions, maps, engineering plans, and political debates across extraordinary spans of time. Its greatest weakness may be the same memory. Every reform encounters a precedent. Every province can find an ancient grievance. Every political movement claims to represent the true Rome. Authoritarians use eagles and legions. Democrats use assemblies and citizenship. Religious leaders invoke martyrs. Secular reformers invoke pluralism. The past cannot tell the present which inheritance is correct because the past contains all of them. The modern federation is wealthier and more stable than many states. It is not free from inequality. North African provinces argue that federal investment still favors European regions. Eastern provinces complain about security burdens. Migrants face discrimination. Wealth concentrates in financial cities. Climate change damages Mediterranean agriculture, increases heat, and raises pressure on coastal infrastructure. The government coordinates water policy across several provinces using institutions descended distantly from aqueduct administrations. That does not create water. Old systems can organize sacrifice. They cannot remove physical limits. The Federation is also not immune to separatism. Several provinces hold legal independence referendums. Some choose greater autonomy. A few leave and later negotiate associated status. Citizens debate whether a state that permits departure can still call itself an empire. The official answer is historical. The emotional answer differs by generation. Young people often use federation. Older ceremonies use commonwealth. Traditional documents use empire. All three names refer to overlapping versions of one political line. Julia's exhibition includes a final room called the Falls of Rome. Each wall displays an event that could reasonably be described as an ending. The Western military crisis of the 5th century. The loss of Egypt and Syria. The end of lifetime emperors. The independence of provinces. The industrial revolutions. The failed authoritarian coup. The world wars. Decolonization. The removal of imperial executive power. Visitors are asked which moment marked the fall. There is no approved answer. A schoolchild writes on the interactive wall that Rome fell every time it had to become something else. Another writes that changing is not falling. Julia leaves both comments visible. This world is not obviously better than ours. It may have preserved more texts, maintained more infrastructure, and avoided some periods of Western political fragmentation. It may have developed public health, printing, or industry somewhat earlier. It also preserved an imperial bureaucracy capable of controlling people across vast distances. It carried Roman expansion into new regions. It created different wars, different inequalities, and different forms of colonialism. The absence of one historical collapse does not remove human ambition, fear, disease, prejudice, greed, or violence. It rearranges the institutions through which they operate. The world may be more politically continuous. It is not morally complete. At noon, Julia walks into the Senate gallery for the Continuity Day address. The Augusta speaks beneath a ceiling containing ancient stone, medieval reinforcement, industrial steel, and modern sensors. She does not claim an unbroken bloodline from Augustus. No such line could be demonstrated or politically accepted. She traces the office through law. More than 2,000 years earlier, Augustus gathered power while preserving the language of the Republic. The modern Augusta preserves the language of empire while exercising the powers of a constitutional symbol. The office has traveled almost the entire distance between those two forms. The speech ends with a phrase used on federal buildings. Rome endures while Romans consent. The audience applauds. Julia thinks of all the centuries when many Romans were never asked. What, then, would actually happen if the Roman Empire had never fallen? The first answer is that Rome could not remain ancient. An empire governed through slow messages, personal military loyalty, hereditary wealth, and conquest could not administer a modern industrial society without changing beyond recognition. If the Western states survived the 5th century, it would still face plague, invasion, religious conflict, economic transformation, nationalism, and demands for political rights. The version most likely to reach the present would not be Augustus's empire enlarged across time. It would be a state repeatedly rebuilt under an old legal identity. Its borders would move. Its capital would share power. Its emperor would become constitutional or ceremonial. Its provinces would require autonomy. Citizenship would eventually matter more than ancestry. At some point, people would argue that calling such a system an empire was historically meaningful and politically misleading. The argument itself would become part of Roman continuity. The second answer is that 476 would lose its importance. Historians in this alternate world might study the 5th century crisis as a near collapse, not a fall. They would remember Majorian's reforms, the recovery of North African revenue, the limitation of military commanders, and the creation of provincial government. They would still debate which change mattered most. Perhaps the fleet survives, but Majorian later fails. Perhaps the succession system collapses under a weaker ruler. Perhaps the plague or Eastern wars destroy what the reforms preserved. Our timeline is one plausible route, not a prediction. Counterfactual history becomes less reliable with every generation because each changed event alters the people, institutions, and choices that follow. By the modern era, almost none of the familiar political map could be assumed. The third answer is that the Eastern Roman Empire already demonstrates part of the possibility. The state centered on Constantinople continued long after Western imperial government disappeared. Its citizens called themselves Romans, maintained Roman law and administration, and adapted through centuries of military, cultural, religious, and economic change. A Roman state surviving into the modern world is not impossible because Rome proved capable of extraordinary duration already. The difficult part is imagining Western survival without pretending that every challenge disappears. A longer-lived Western system would probably need some of the qualities that allowed the Eastern Empire to endure: strong taxation, defended cities, professional administration, diplomacy, cultural adaptation, and a willingness to survive with reduced territory. It would also need political innovations the ancient empire never developed fully. The fourth answer is that Europe would not simply advance 1,000 years faster. The fall of Western Roman government caused real disruption in many regions. Long-distance trade contracted. Some cities shrank. Infrastructure deteriorated. Literacy and state capacity changed. Preserving Western institutions could reduce some losses. That does not create automatic technological acceleration. The medieval world after Rome did not become intellectually empty. Scholarship continued in Constantinople, the Islamic world, monasteries, courts, cities, India, China, Africa, and elsewhere. New political competition produced innovations of its own. Technology depends on more than preserved books. A steam engine requires metallurgy, fuel, finance, demand, and a reason to replace existing labor. Printing requires paper, suitable inks, production methods, and readers able to buy texts. Modern science requires instruments, mathematical tools, communities that test results, and institutions willing to challenge authority. Continuous Rome might reach some developments earlier. It might delay others through bureaucracy, social hierarchy, or reverence for ancient writers. The honest answer is not Roman computers in the Middle Ages. It is a different path with fewer losses in some areas and stronger resistance in others. The fifth answer is that Latin would survive differently. Latin already survived Rome's political decline and developed into the Romance languages. In a continuous commonwealth, spoken regional forms would still change. Distance, migration, local identity, and ordinary human speech would produce dialects and new languages. A shared government and education system might preserve a common written form longer. Modern citizens could use an evolved federal Roman language alongside regional languages. They would not speak the Latin of Caesar in supermarkets or video calls. 2,000 years of living speech never remained still. Greek would remain central in the East. Arabic, Berber, Celtic, Germanic, Slavic, and other languages would influence the Commonwealth. Roman identity would become multilingual because survival would require it. The sixth answer is that Christianity would not necessarily remain unified. Religious division did not occur only because the Western Empire fell. Theology, language, political authority, regional traditions, and competing institutions all contributed. A surviving Roman government might delay certain divisions or create different ones. It might also make disputes more politically dangerous by trying to impose unity across a large population. Islam would still be capable of emerging in Arabia. Persian, Jewish, Christian, and other traditions would continue shaping the region. A stronger Rome might change the borders of early Islamic expansion, but it could not simply erase a religion through administrative continuity. The most durable Roman state would eventually separate citizenship from one official faith. Otherwise, religious difference would repeatedly become territorial rebellion. The seventh answer is that slavery and hierarchy would remain central moral dangers. Ancient Rome depended heavily on slavery. Continuous institutions might preserve the practice longer rather than abolish it sooner. Economic change, religious argument, rebellion, labor scarcity, and political reform could eventually end legal ownership of people. The result would not guarantee equality. Debt bondage, coerced labor, colonial exploitation, class hierarchy, and discrimination could replace older categories. A state does not become moral merely because it has existed long enough to witness moral arguments. Longevity can provide time for reform. It can also give injustice deeper roots. The eighth answer is that Roman law and citizenship might become the strongest thread connecting the ancient state to the modern one. Rome historically expanded citizenship across diverse populations and developed legal concepts influential far beyond its borders. A surviving commonwealth could continue widening civic membership until Roman meant participation in a political system rather than descent from Italy. This offers a hopeful path. A Frank, African, Greek, Anatolian, Iberian, immigrant, convert, or member of a minority community could become fully Roman in law. The darker path is also plausible. Roman institutions could use citizenship to rank people, demand assimilation, and justify expansion as the delivery of civilization. The same legal system can protect a provincial community and define that community as inferior. Modern Roman identity would contain both inheritances. The ninth answer is that the Mediterranean might remain more politically integrated. Trade, transport, law, public health, and environmental policy could develop across a shared system connecting Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. The cultural division between a supposedly European Rome and the African and Eastern provinces would be harder to maintain in a state where Carthage, Constantinople, and perhaps other cities remained permanent centers of power. This might produce a modern federation less centered on Northern Europe. It would not erase regional inequality or prejudice. The Mediterranean could become a common political space and still contain conflicts over resources, migration, language, and historical power. The 10th answer is that modern monuments would feel different. The Colosseum, Pantheon, aqueducts, roads, bridges, and administrative buildings would not all survive unchanged. Continuous use often destroys original material through repair, adaptation, fire, earthquake, war, and redevelopment. Some structures might remain more complete because governments maintain them. Others might disappear precisely because the city never became an archaeological landscape. A modern Roman could attend a public event in a structure built around ancient foundations without treating it as a visit to a dead civilization. The emotional difference would be profound. For us, Rome is both history and ruin. For them, Rome would be government, bureaucracy, identity, and tomorrow's election. The 11th answer is that the world outside Rome would change beyond reliable reconstruction. No familiar medieval kingdoms means different marriages, wars, migrations, and languages. The histories producing modern France, Spain, Britain, Germany, Italy, and many states in the Americas would not unfold in the same way. Major religious, scientific, and political figures might never be born. Other people would take their place. China, India, Islamic civilizations, African powers, American societies, and Northern European states would develop in response to a different Mediterranean world. Rome might become one global power among several. It might dominate for periods and decline during others. Never fallen does not mean never weakened. A state can remain legally continuous while becoming smaller, poorer, or less influential. The 12th answer is that contact with the Americas would still carry danger. A Roman legal tradition might create earlier debates about citizenship and the rights of contacted peoples. A federal government might restrain some private conquest. It might also organize colonization efficiently. Disease would remain catastrophic because laws cannot create immunity. Economic ambition would remain. Missionary activity, settlement, extraction, alliances, and war would produce complex consequences. There is no sound historical reason to assume Roman explorers would be kinder merely because their state was older. Ancient Rome was skilled at incorporation. It was also skilled at conquest. The 13th answer is that an unbroken Roman state could still experience dictators, civil wars, and mass violence. The name Rome would not protect institutions from people using Roman symbols against Roman law. In fact, the depth of the tradition could provide authoritarian movements with unusually powerful mythology. Every crisis could produce someone promising to restore the true empire. The defense would not be age. It would be distributed institutions, independent courts, civilian control of the army, free communication, provincial autonomy, and citizens willing to defend rules when those rules become inconvenient. Continuity is not self-sustaining. Every generation must decide whether the inherited state remains legitimate. The final answer is that Rome would survive only by learning not to require permanence from everything. It would need to accept religious change. It would need to accept lost territory. It would need to accept new citizens, new languages, foreign knowledge, criticism, elections, independent courts, and the reduction of imperial power. It might even need to accept that provinces can leave. The unchanging empire would fall. The changing empire might endure. This means the modern Roman Federation would be ancient in law and recent in almost every practical form. Its citizens would inherit a story stretching back to Augustus, while living under rights, technologies, and social values created through struggles much closer to their own time. They might feel extraordinary pride. They might also feel trapped beneath the weight of precedent. A political institution more than 2,000 years old could create stability. It could make every reform feel like an argument with the dead. Julia Vero thinks about this after the Continuity Day ceremony ends. The crowds leave the Senate district. Security barriers are removed. Street cleaners collect paper flags carrying the eagle and the provincial stars. News programs begin arguing about whether the Augustus speech was too patriotic or not patriotic enough. The oldest empire in the world returns to ordinary politics before sunset. Julia goes back to the archive. The exhibition rooms are empty. Motion sensors lower the lights. Behind climate-controlled glass, Marcus Vero's note rests beside later documents from Alexandria, Carthage, Corduba, Lugdunum, the industrial courts, the world wars, and the modern constitution. The original 5th century document did not survive. The sentence exists through copies. A 9th century scribe copied it from a damaged parchment. A printer reproduced it in the 11th century. A 19th century archivist compared versions. Modern imaging recovered faded words from the oldest surviving fragment. Continuity is often a copy made carefully enough that the next person can make another. Julia opens the digital archive and listens to a recording of the sentence in reconstructed 5th century Latin. The pronunciation is educated guesswork. No unbroken institution can preserve a human voice for 15 centuries without technology that did not yet exist. The words sound foreign. She switches to Common Roman. The sentence becomes understandable and less distant. Powerful people agreed that losing an argument was better than destroying the state. Julia adds a note to the exhibition for the following morning. The agreement must include more people each time. She closes the file. Outside, Rome is entering evening. Electric buses move along streets shaped by many periods. Restaurant tables fill beneath buildings containing ancient brick, medieval stone, industrial steel, and modern glass. A mosque, several churches, a synagogue, and a secular civic hall stand within walking distance. Teenagers sit on the steps of a public bath complex converted centuries earlier into a library and community center. They complain about school, politics, and the holiday crowds. None appears overwhelmed by living inside alternate history. To them, this is simply history. Julia walks toward the river. The Tiber reflects lights from bridges repaired too many times to belong to one age. The oldest foundations remain beneath newer structures. Engineers inspect them continuously because ancient does not mean indestructible. Across the water, the restored dome of the Pantheon rises above rooftops. Farther away, the Colosseum glows before an evening concert. A train leaves the city on a route that will eventually reach Massilia. Another departs toward the Adriatic and Constantinople. The network is modern. The names are old. Julia passes a souvenir shop selling miniature legionary helmets beside federal election badges. History has become identity, scholarship, propaganda, entertainment, and income. It has also become ordinary memory. She reaches her apartment shortly before midnight. Her daughter is finishing an assignment about the 5th century reforms. The teacher has asked students whether Hadrian saved Rome. Julia's daughter says the question is unfair. One person cannot save 15 centuries. Julia asks what answer she plans to write. The girl says Hadrian created time. Other people decided what to do with it. Julia likes the sentence and does not tell her how to improve it. They prepare for bed. This detail remains the same in both worlds. The Roman state has survived emperors, plagues, invasions, religious divisions, printing, industry, nationalism, dictatorship, global war, computers, and the internet. The human body still becomes tired after one day. No constitutional reform removes the need for darkness and rest. Julia turns off the apartment lights. The city does not become silent. Trains move. Hospitals remain open. Night workers clean the Senate halls. Data centers preserve copies of archives in several provinces. The Federation continues without requiring every citizen to remain awake for it. Imagine the city from above. Begin with the modern streets and follow them outward. Some routes align with roads surveyed by Roman engineers. Others cut across neighborhoods those engineers could never have imagined. Follow the rail lines toward the coast. Cross the dark Mediterranean to Carthage. Continue east toward Greece, the islands, and Constantinople. The sea is not owned by one empire. Ships carry flags from many states. Languages cross the radio. Weather ignores political history. From high enough above Earth, no line reveals which civilization fell and which survived. The Roman Federation exists inside documents, institutions, buildings, habits, borders, and human agreement. It is real because people continue acting as though its laws connect them. Every state exists partly through that same fragile practice. The alternate world reveals something about the real one. Civilizations rarely end in one moment. They weaken, adapt, divide, merge, rename themselves, and survive inside institutions that no longer carry their original flag. Rome fell in the West. Rome also survived through law, language, religion, architecture, roads, political ideas, and the Eastern Empire for centuries. The question is not only why Rome ended. It is how much of Rome continued after the ending. Tonight's imagined federation makes that continuity visible by keeping the government alive. Our world keeps other forms. You do not need to decide which history is better before sleeping. The real path produced suffering, fragmentation, creativity, diversity, conquest, freedom, loss, and lives that could not exist in any alternate timeline. The imagined path contains its own mixture. Removing one collapse does not remove tragedy. Preserving one institution does not preserve every person. History remains too large for a simple verdict. Let the Senate debate continue without you. Let Julia's exhibition open again in the morning. Let historians compare copies, question myths, and revise labels. The archive has waited centuries. It can wait through one night. Picture Rome becoming quieter. The concert at the Colosseum ends. People move toward trains. Restaurant chairs are stacked. The river continues beneath the bridges. The Pantheon's great dome holds darkness above an empty floor. In the archive, the lights dim around Marcus Varro's sentence. The words do not need to be read again tonight. Far back in 476, the messenger has reached Ravenna. The letter has been opened. The revolt has failed. Nobody in the room knows what comes next. They do not see steam engines, elections, world wars, electric trains, or Julia walking home 15 centuries later. They see rain against the palace windows. They see a damaged government that has survived one more day. Every long history is made from days that did not know they were long. You are living inside one of those days now. Its unfinished questions can remain unfinished. The rise and fall of civilizations does not require your attention until morning. Let the imagined eagle disappear from the flags. Let the old roads fade into darkness. Let the centuries become distant enough that they no longer need to be counted. The empire can continue without being watched. The river can move beneath the bridges. The archive can hold its fragile copies. And you can let this day end in the ordinary way shared by people in every version of history. Quietly, without ceremony, with nothing left to defend, govern, preserve, or understand before sleep. Let Rome endure somewhere beyond the edge of thought. Let the real world remain beneath you. And for the rest of tonight, allow every empire, real or imagined, to become still. Sleep well.